Well, what's going on, everybody? My name is Tyler Anderson from Tyler's Real Fishing on YouTube on behalf of Lucky Tackle Box, and today I'm going to be describing to you guys how to catch fish on the 50X Squarebill by 6 Cents Lures. Let's get started.
That's what's up, man. Let's go!
So I've had the privilege of fishing 6 Cents Lures for a few years now because they've been a sponsor for the college team that I fish on. And let me tell you, these baits are some of the most realistic and lifelike baits out there, and they just flat out catch fish. And this bait right here is probably my favorite bait of all time. It is the Crush 50X Squarebill. This Squarebill is so versatile, and I've caught fish on it during every single month of the year. So we're gonna start out with rigging, retrieval, and location to show you guys how to best catch fish on these on your local ponds and lakes. So rigging a Squarebill crankbait doesn't take anything but a knot, but we're also gonna talk about the gear that's required to throw a Squarebill crankbait like this. Now, throughout my years of fishing, I have thrown this exact Squarebill on every combo imaginable, from a 7-Eleven crankbait rod to a 5'6" spinning rod. So really, rods don't matter a whole lot when it comes to Squarebill fishing, but I believe the right crankbait rod and reel combo can help you make longer casts and catch more fish, also feel the bite better. And so basically, the combo that I'm using is a shallow crankbait model. And so this is the Lew's Squarebill crankbait rod. It is the custom speed stick. And it pairs great with the Lew's BB1 Pro crankbait reel, and I have this on 10-pound fluorocarbon line today. Now, I have a lot of buddies that throw Squarebill crankbaits on monofilament because they believe that when a bait hits the piece of cover and deflects off, the monofilament helps it better because it doesn't dig into the wood or the rocks that you're fishing in as much. And so basically, there's kind of two schools of thought there. I just mainly throw fluorocarbon on all of my rods and reels. It's more invisible, has less stretch, and so I truly believe that fluorocarbon is the right line for this bait. But 10-pound line is not always the right pound for this bait. If you are fishing a super heavy cover situation like East Texas lakes, or up in the rivers of Kentucky Lake, those kind of lakes out there, and even some lakes for grass up there in Minnesota and Michigan, where some of you guys are living, I believe that 15 to 17-pound line is better for a Squarebill crankbait. But today, I am fishing crystal clear water. I'm talking 10 to 12 feet visibility on a super rocky lake, and so I can get away with fishing 10-pound line today. So basically, all I do with rigging is I just tie a simple Palomar knot. If you guys don't know how to tie a Palomar knot, there are videos out there on YouTube. Basically, you just make a loop, feed the loop through the eye of the split ring there, and then put that loop around the bait. And one thing that I always do that I guarantee you has eliminated a lot of knot breakage in my fishing career is, before I cinch the knot down, I take my tongue and I basically lick the whole line. That way, when the knot cinches down, there's nothing that could possibly be frayed, or what they call heat. I call heat frayed or heat singed, because your line moves so fast on itself that it kind of singes itself because of how hot it is. So that is why you want to wet your line. And I cut the tag in just like that, and once I get this untangled here, we are ready to go fishing. So when talking about retrieval with the Squarebill crankbait, there's a few things to keep in mind. When you look at a bass's forage, the forage is the things they eat. So whether it's shad, bluegill, gizzard shad, trout like you guys have in California, if I have any California viewers watching, you never see any sort of bass forage kind of moving in a slow, steady direction. Maybe besides the trout. Most other forages all basically move in an erratic way. And so you want to represent that in the same way with the Squarebill crankbait. And so I'm rarely going to just throw it out there and reel it straight back in like this. I'm almost always going to be reeling, pause, reel, pause, jerk, reel. And it can be any sort of combination with that. You really have to test out kind of what your fish want. So when I get to the lake in the morning, I'll start off with a fairly fast reel, stop, reel, pause, jerk, reel, stop, reel, jerk. That's kind of the pattern I do: reel, stop, reel, jerk. And then eventually, if I don't get any bites doing that, I may slow it down to a slower crawl with a stop every 10 or 15 cranks of the handle. And then if that doesn't work, maybe those fish are super active, I'll cast it out there and just straight burn it back to the bank, or back to the boat. All sorts of jerks and pauses, just to see if that's the kind of reaction these fish want. So also something to keep in mind with retrieval, that also kind of plays in the location, is how you want the bait to be moving on the bottom. And so if you're throwing the Squarebill like this, 6 Cents only dives to 5 or 6 feet maximum with 10-pound line, if you're throwing deeper than 5 or 6 feet, you're not going to make contact with the bottom. And so I meet a lot of people that say, oh, I don't like throwing crankbaits because I get stuck on the bottom all the time.
I don't like crankbaits, I get stuck.
That's kind of actually what you want to do. The goal of the Squarebill crankbait is to deflect off the bottom, to deflect off of cover. And so if you're not getting your cast, super close to the shore, deflecting off trees, rocks, dock pilings, anything of that nature, you're most often not going to be using the Squarebill to the greatest potential it can have. And so that's why I'm so close to the bank here and not casting to it and working it back. I'm practically what we call paralleling, where I get right next to the bank, cast it up there, and then for 3/4 of the cast, the bait is touching the bottom. And so it really gives me the maximum efficiency when fishing the Squarebill crankbait, and it definitely allows me to catch more fish at the end of the day. And finally, we're going to talk about location today. Now, when fishing a Squarebill crankbait, location is very key. Now, while I said this bait is a very versatile bait and it can be fished in all conditions, that is true, but it doesn't mean that all conditions always work for the crankbait on that specific day. And so basically, kind of the conditions that I was thrown today was post-cold front, deep, clear, rocky lake. Not always conducive to Squarebills. And so I had to search for very, very specific areas that I knew a few fish were going to be concentrated in order to catch fish. Now, most of the time when I'm fishing a Squarebill crankbait, I'm looking for some sort of cover, and the situation was not different today. And so basically, I look for any sort of wood, rock, grass combinations, and I want that bait to be deflecting off the cover. Now, today it is November 26th or 27th. It's kind of getting late in the year here. I know many of you guys, especially north of the Midwestern United States, can't even throw a crankbait anymore because the water is either 30 degrees or completely frozen. And so I implore you guys to save this until the springtime when it becomes more applicable, as these tips do apply to the spring as well. But I basically kind of went straight to a main lake point, went in a little bit, and just started cruising down a shoreline until I saw an area that looked prime. Now, the type of area that I was looking for was basically an indentation in the shoreline with which a fish could have access to deep water, but also live up there in that shallow water. And so I found a little tiny cut, and I made a cast. Got one. Bring it in, little buddy. Not a big one on the Squarebill here, but it just proves my point about location, is that you really have to focus, especially in the late fall when fish are starting to move offshore, on where those fish are going to be positioned at. Where those fish are going to be positioned at, because I moved my way along a whole shoreline, didn't catch a single fish until I got to the prime location like I talked about. And while it's not a big fish, it still proves the point that Squarebills can catch fish at all times of the year. Even though it got a little cold here in Central Texas, the Crush 50X is still a great bait. So happy to catch a fish. See you, little buddy. So especially with a Squarebill crankbait, you want to cover a ton of water until you find those high percentage areas. I've had days where I look on my navionics, on my electronics or a map, and I find 10 spots that look really good based on contours. And I just bounce throughout those all day long. I'm not trolling around the lake, wasting a bunch of time on water that's probably not productive. I'm gonna hit those spots in as quickly and efficiently as possible, because this bait is all about speed, all about covering a lot of water, and oftentimes all about catching big bass. So thank you guys so much for watching this video, and thank you guys so much for subscribing to Lucky Tackle Box. If you guys haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel yet, make sure you guys do that, and head over to my channel as well, Tyler's Real Fishing. It'll be linked up here or over here or down in the description as well, and I'll be down in the comments answering any sort of comments or questions you guys have. And if you guys want to get your very own Lucky Tackle Box to your doorstep every month, feel free to use my discount code for $5 off down below. And if you guys haven't yet, make sure you guys like this video, drop a comment below letting us know what you think, and we'll see you guys in the next episode of Lucky Tackle Box.